I think I'll correct Nafisa here in that there are many facets to Imran we could speak of today, but today is a sacred day reserved for the launch of his book. So I'm going to make a few comments about Imran. Remember, I'm not an art critic. I barely make it to curator, but I daren't say that in Niloufar Faroukh's presence. Uh, I sometimes try to make it to architect, but although I think Shahid would be a little indulgent about that, Habib Fidali would not. So I have to be careful of what I say. Um, I'm going to start by saying that today is an important day. I disagree with Nafisa to the extent that I don't believe a new trajectory has opened up to us in Imran Mir's 12th paper on modern art. It is the 12th paper on modern art, which implies it is a continuum. It is a continuum of the work he has done all these years. He has chosen to present it in the form of the paper. And I think we need to perhaps look at what occurred in Imran's work earlier to be able to understand why is today important, why is going up to that studio important, and why is it so important that so many friends of Imran and so many well-wishers and so many appreciators of his work are all here today. I think the best way I can utilize my time is to go to the book. But before I go to the book, I think I need to say a little about what the book has achieved and what it has not achieved. It's superb, so close to Imran's passing away, to be able to have a visual compendium of his work. I wouldn't say it is a standard visual compendium. It concentrates more on later works, and there are, if not crucial, missing works in the earlier Ove. There are perhaps, there is an attempt to live with the rigors of economy and elaboration, a kind of contradiction and perhaps a tension between them, and try and put as many works out as one can humanly. But the problem with Imran's work is that from the title, it's very clear what you see is what you see. That, remember, this man was a man with a sense of humor. He was also a man who didn't like what Victor Hugo would have called as the curtains of his soul being lifted for examination. He didn't like to discuss his work. How absolutely exasperating that a man like Imran Mir should, even in what became his last known work, have refused to communicate on his creative process and the insides of his mind. Is it because they didn't exist? Absolutely not. Is it because he valued his privacy and didn't want to speak about that kind of thing? I don't think so. I think that the answer lies in the method of Imran Mir. There are two parts to his thinking. One obviously appears in his art. The other, which is viewed as a separate area, is his communication skills, which he utilized while working with media. I think we might do well to remember that these are both manifestations of the same essential web of creativity. We should look at these works just like Durya Kazi and Nafisa have in the book, just like they look at the sculpture and the paintings as complementing each other. I think we need to look at the communication skills of Imran Mir as being part of the communication strategy of his works. It was very strange that when Imran was in hospital, he 3 times asked Nighat to get me to see him. I went, but each time he was not well enough to receive visitors. Why would he ask for me? He had so many friends. If he wanted to discuss his work, I would have called Jalal Saab or somebody equally important. If the structures of his 12th paper on modern art, what lay inside those forms, that he had played in a 2-dimensional plane with some dimensionality visible through it, a 3rd dimension, so to speak, he should have called Shahid Abdullah. But why me? And I think the answer lies in the fact that he was desperate to ensure that the communication part of his message had gone through. Now, I think that we need, first of all, to part ways with Imran Mir. What you see is what you see is one of Imran Mir's bigger lies. He didn't tell many lies. It's not what you see, what he intends you to see, what you educate yourself to see, what you work hard to see, what you perceive in terms of the artist's intention is what you see. It doesn't remove those wonderful phrases, those wonderful periods of creativity where you are able with sensation to respond to the visual body of his works. It doesn't mean you can't have your own trajectory when you're looking at his paintings or his sculpture. It doesn't mean you can't fantasize. But it does mean that there is some form, some content, some parameters in what you need to look at. Not because the artist's intention is the most important thing, but that the artist's intention will tell us something about the summation of his career. I'm going to go through with you, utilize most of my time, taking extracts from the book, just to give you an example of what I consider to be some of the more penetrating aspects which would reflect on what I'm saying today. It doesn't mean that the other ones are not penetrating. It simply means that Imran played a game in which he put his life and career down. It was all he was prepared to speak about. So that door on the apartment in New York, that tree in his home, all these things, these are distractions from what is a very formal and rigorous body of work. And I think today is important because today will decide the artistic future of Imran Mir when you people are there. When you visit that gallery above, that studio above, and you look at that work and you connect it, and then you ask yourself, was he just a good guy who passed away? Or was there one of Pakistan's most important artists in the making who had embarked on a very important phase of his message? I don't think it's a new trajectory. I think that everything in his earlier papers prepares you for where he might be going. There's nothing unexpected. I think Nafisa would agree with that. I think there is something daring, something startling. It's an emergence of his 12th paper on modern art is like a new discipline in science emerging from another aspect of an aesthetic science. So I think partly how we look at his work today, partly how Nighat and Imran Mir's friends follow up on his work in the future with respect to academic institutions. What we don't have in this work, what you see is what you see, is not a monograph. We need a monograph on Imran Mir. These are a series of perspectives. When you have so many people writing from so many different disciplines, it's very difficult. You have different vocabularies, you have different perceptions, you have different concepts. And how does someone's A equal another person's A, or someone's B equal someone's A? Getting this phraseology very clear is important, because this is part of that second discipline that Imran was so keyed into, communication. How do we communicate the essence of Imran's ideas? How do we facilitate that communication to the art community, to the students in the campuses, and to the future of Pakistan? His art belongs, has an international appeal. It's part of an international engagement, a dialogue, but its roots are here, and we need to develop those roots, because as Ali Imam said after his 6th paper, something new is happening in Pakistani art today. Well, we've known for some time it's new. How new, how important, and how critical is something I hope to bring across to you along with the other speakers here today. I'll start with quotations, and that's most of what I'll say. And I'll read to you the ones that I think are important for illustrating what I have to say. I start with Dr. Rashida Rai, Beyond the Narcissism of the Self. The absence of iconography in the work of Imran Mir may appear to be an avoidance to come to terms with the reality of the world, which demands its representation through the images that now proliferate the popular media, as well as the everyday life of the modern metropolis. Karachi in particular contains the streets that are an unending spectacle of color carnivalesque, with contradictory configurations of all kinds of images as well as calligraphy, whose seductiveness constantly draws our attention. Why is then Imran Mir not attracted to this spectacle which he must experience every day? Why is he, unlike most artists who are obsessed with depicting and reflecting upon their work, the picture of consumer society withdrawn into the mediation of what appears to be the nothingness of an abstract world. Is he trying to protect his imagination from what constantly bombards it, which may disturb and thus obstruct his imagination from what is necessary for its free creativity? By asking these questions, I have in fact evoked what is an extremely difficult question, whose roots are firmly embedded in human history. Why is humanity now so obsessed with iconographic images and their displays everywhere? Is humanity still not trapped in its earliest formative years of primitive narcissism, when it looked into the mirror to recognize itself and others, and then, by recreating what it saw with its open eyes, became conscious of it being in the world? The primitivism of self-consciousness still prevails. It seems Imran Mir is turning his back to this mirror image in an attempt to create a world that is not entirely reflective but contemplative. I think that's a crucial factor. So what emerges from it transcends the earthly needs of the body and its pictorial representation. I think that's a powerful comment by Rashid and I on what constitutes Imran's, I think, response, his medium of abstract art, and how a man who was so immersed in the visual material dialogue of today, how it was not the focus of his art, how something else apparently was, a new aesthetic, a new set of axioms, perhaps a series of theorems which we need to decipher today and in the days to come. Let's go to Ali Imam. In his piece, Visual Sensation in Imran Mir's Painting. Imran Mir's exhibition of works entitled Sixth Paper on Modern Art, that is the one that was in the Dawn Gallery. Ehsan is here and he spearheaded most of the arrangements for that. Poses many questions and demands answers to the ever-recurring question as to what art is all about. Is it the rediscovery of the world, bringing meaning to our experience? Is it a dialogue about new concepts, messages, or a way of seeing? Is it a communication with oneself about visual expressions? Is it a contradiction in experience which leads to new concepts and dissemination of new ideas or new truths? These questions have always arisen when old concepts are challenged or broken. Imran's present exhibition consists of paintings that show both his ideas emerged from his first series of paintings and later spread into well-defined and well-structured canvases. Geometrical forms of squares, circles, triangles, lines with surfaces of flat colors. They motivate the viewer to wonder what Imran is all about. But as one looks and ponders on the paintings, they begin to acquire a new dimension and emit unusual visual sensations with what the viewer gradually begins to feel in harmony. As you move in front of the canvases, you begin to feel the dynamics of the forms, lines, intersections of planes and surfaces created by the interplay of the seemingly abstract images. The viewer then gradually gets onto the wavelength of Imran's work to enjoy the optical illusions of his imagery, in which both the painting and the viewer are kinetic or mobile. This kinetic game is all the more obvious in Imran's installations, scores of painted cubic boxes which can be arranged like a monolith, a wall, or in any way the viewer may wish to arrange them during the exhibition. I think that Ali Imam and Rashid Arai are both right in the questions that they raise, because where we are in respect to understanding Imran's work is a stage of questions. And the questions we begin to formulate today, the questions which go into the kind of workshops we hope that Nigat and the boys will be able to inspire, will create the kind of kinetic movement, perhaps, that is so important to understanding Imran's art. Hassan Jafri. I loved Hassan Jafri. He's not here anymore. Notoriously difficult man to understand. Why did Imran like his work on Imran? The answer is he struck a chord. Despite sometimes being on a very high philosophical plane, way beyond you and me at most of the time, Hassan Jafri hit a chord up there. I'm told when diplomats are present, sometimes their mobile security tends to create problems in radio mics, but this is not necessarily true. Take it as a piece of gossip. Hassan Jafri says, in fact, the continuous presence of the circle in Imran Mir's art serves as a constant that predicates the search for truth, reality, perception, the explicit and profound possibilities of balance within and between the surreal and abstract elements. The expansive opening out of space sometimes overtakes one by surprise as one begins to realize that it is not the meaning of the apparent random nature of the surreal or even existential forms, but the balance of their fluid and static relationship in which their values lie. Imran Mir's efforts seem to go beyond the purely abstract, rational and visual, and allow the artist in him to constructively engage the era of supersession of visual culture. In other words, his work can be sensed as an attempt to structure visual space by a total and simultaneous field of relations, as in the acoustic space. It is precisely in this conscious awareness of change in the feeling and sensibility that his art becomes the live environment of an electronic information system in the full organic sense. And then Hassan ends with a quote from Vasily Kandinsky. He says, "Let me conclude by quoting Kandinsky once again, who says it all and as if unknowingly describes Imran Mir's work more than half a century ago." I'm sure Imran loved that. Color is the key. Color is the key, the eye is the hammer. The soul is the piano with its many chords. The artist is the hand that by touching this or that key sets the soul vibrating automatically. What more can I say myself, Hassan adds. And that Kandinsky quotation is important. Another important piece is by David Robson, Some Thoughts on the Art of Imran Mir. And David is not an expert on the visual arts in that sense of the word. He is somebody who Imran interacted with in many ways, but what he says has a lot of significance. It says, Imran, it seems to me, has led a double life. His day-to-day job to run a successful advertising agency in Karachi, which he founded at the beginning of the 1980s. For the rest, he retires to his studio in the elegant modern Haveli which he shares with his wife Nighat, shuts out the bustle of the city and paints obsessively. Advertising fills our world with the giant images which line our streets, clothe our buildings, pop out of television sets. These images are hyper-representational. They send coded messages into the deepest recesses of our minds in order to influence the way we think and feel. Choose me, buy me, eat me, worship me, vote for me, be happy, be sad. They have become the most potent icons of our age and are the stock of Imran's daily trade. But Imran the artist does not set out to persuade. His art is abstract, pure and simple. Nor does it result from a process of abstraction in which a representational image is progressively subjected to distortion. It begins and ends at the same point, with images which are apparently arbitrary and without meaning. The main visual protagonists of his canvases may resemble things that we think we recognize. Balls of wool, spools of barbed wire, but they might just as well be figures from a textbook on geometry or an arcane paper on microbiology. Imran is a man of few words, and his paintings also avoid conversation. He interrogates an empty canvas, but he does not use it to transmit messages. Each essay is an experiment with marks on empty state, an exploration of the properties of line, form, and color, and their ability to create the illusion of three-dimensional space. It is non-figurative and non-representational, and serves as an invitation to the viewer to set out on his or her own sensual exploration. The experimental nature of Imran's work is evident from the fact that he refers to the various phases of work as papers, the most recent being the 12th. Thus, each work is presented as one of a group which together puts forward a hypothesis, though the exact nature of the hypothesis is not made explicit. However, the testing of the hypothesis remains the responsibility of the viewer, who is left to draw his or her own conclusions. Although his paintings doubtlessly hold meanings for him, he does not seek to convey these to others. Each painting is an invitation to us to embark on our own individual journey, to supply our own narrative, to invent our own meanings. Each acts as a catalyst to our imagination, like a sky filled with billowing clouds, across which our imaginations can roam in freedom. In this way, Imran questions our assumptions about art, that it can tell stories accurately or convey precise emotions or influence the way we think or feel, and he questions the notion that a painting can set up a meaningful dialogue between the artist and the viewer. He is a provocateur, not a transmitter. His works are simulations, not narratives, and we, his viewers, are responders, not receivers. Durya is not here, so I feel free to quote from her work, Imran Mir, The Sounds of Silence. She's not here with me, I meant. She's there at the back with a sore throat. Durya's paper, like Nafisa's, is particularly incisive, and I would propose to all of you here that what we need to see is a Durya and Nafisa collaboration to further explore the monograph that should follow from this work today. Durya says in her work, throughout his career as an artist, Imran Mir has remained true to the notion of art as investigation. He set out on this journey fresh out of school with his first paper, as he chose to call each body of work, to the latest 12th paper of 2014. Art investigation, unlike the scientific method, sets out without any attempt to visualize the final outcome of the work, which may be unexpected and surprising even for the artist. He travels on a craft of intuition, or by initiating a system that will unfold according to its own internal logic. Mir's work shares some of these methodologies and premises, though he ventures even further into the unknown by relinquishing premise altogether. My work is a statement, but I'm not sure what the statement is. In this sense, it may be more accurate to describe his process as generative, initiating a system into motion and allowing it to follow its own trajectory. She quotes from Naum Gabo and Nikolai Pevsner in their Realistic Manifesto of 1920 Art. We acknowledge the line only as the direction of static forces. We acknowledge the line only as the direction of static forces that are hidden in the objects and of their rhythms. I think I want to bring this line which Durya quotes to your notice only because as you walk up to the studio today, you will see how this line, you can see the direction of static forces that are hidden in these objects as a new form, an internal inert form begins to emerge from what started off as mostly two-dimensional, but not exclusively two-dimensional planes. These lines have begun to generate in the 12th paper on modern art, and that is the important work that we are to witness today, and that is the work from which we will draw our final inspiration from Imran's work and hope we can continue to communicate the content of his art to people up here. As someone who has followed Imran Mir's works for many years now, despite his reluctance to concede to any interpretation of his work, the complete submission to intuition gives his work a spiritual, almost Sufi dimension. By choosing a monumental scale for his works, he further envelops the viewer within the experience of powerful silence and the still center of metaphysical movement. It is like contemplating the firmament, knowing all is motion, but being acutely aware of the stillness. This is especially evident in Mir's later works, the 10th and 11th, and most recently, the 12th paper on modern art. Then Nafisa Rizvi, who is the editor, along with Nigat, of the collection, she says in her piece, Multiplicity in a Complex World. Since then, Mir has continued to explore his ideas in both 2 and 3 dimensionalities. The primordial shapes in his paintings are extended to his installations. The orb, the cube, and tubular funnel, suggesting a tunnel bulging 2 sets of chasms. Some of Mir's installations are made of meshed metal, almost as if he's setting up a structural foundation in anticipation of a more concrete form, yet about to take shape, like the wireframe technique in computer graphics imagery. Yet a bright red, well-polished orb is attached, almost as if on a molecular level, to the mesh tunnel or donut, indicating that the work has reached some level of completion for the artist. These words partake of minimalist literalism and the reductivist use of form, quite deliberately preventing psychological absorption and seeking us to seek and directing us to seek other considerations of materiality and external input. It would perhaps be accurate to say that installations are extensions of Imran's paintings. The two mediums share semiotics more so because the paintings themselves posit three-dimensionality, especially in relation to the void that surrounds many of Mir's canvases. But, unlike his paintings, the emptiness is not a viable factor in Mir's installations. Even his donuts or circular bands simulate the idea of a linear configuration of life constituted by the principles of infinity, birth, and regeneration. This notion of regeneration on a molecular level is particularly apparent in three of Mir's works denoting the circle. So while the installations may suggest spatial void in the theoretical sense, they are self-contained ideas of rationality and science. I want to end with a short quotation from Nigat Mir's work, Picasso and Me Confused. Not because Nigat is a brilliant writer, but because in the piece that she analyzes, she has so lucidly caught that elusive quality, that contradiction, that enchanting, almost untraceable quality which Imran Mir had in him and which is no longer with us today. It is not accidental or coincidental that the content of Imran Mir's artwork is an image of Picasso, with Mir's own photo in the foreground. The collage on the left of the diptych constitutes a photographic visualization of Mir, in stages of getting ready to leave the sanctuary of his bedroom and face the world and his morning ritual of shit, shower, and shave. It traces the studied transformational metamorphosis of Mir to a simulated Picasso ready to go to the studio to work his magic. It is a voyeuristic, almost invasive experience, and his introspection borders on self-deprecating humor. Burying himself in the toilet, rejecting the comb, crossed out in red as he has no hair to comb. Finally, ready, Mir is seen in Picasso's beret, snapping his own portrait with the cord of a delay action camera in hand. For Mir, who is not a figurative artist, this production is a giant leap of faith. Through this artwork, he leaves his safe house of geometric abstraction and detachment to take on the mantle of commentator and reviewer, reflecting on the skewed world of art criticism, and gallery practice. I spent some time, I'm sorry, maybe too much time of yours, trying to get across these words from the book to tell you this is an important volume. It is an important beginning. It needs to see a monograph. It needs to see a standardization of phraseology, of methodology, to be able to understand Imran's work, to be able to impart its content. Nafisa says to me, but how can we be subjective? Suppose we stray from Imran's path. Didn't he himself say we should go whichever direction we could be taken in? And I say, it's time to respect the late artist's memory. It's time to pay homage to one of Pakistan's greatest artists. I hope today's trip to the studio above will confirm it. Thank you, and I'm sorry for the delay.